Hi there, just doing a bit of a clip on sourdough, making a sourdough starter, and then I'll go through and actually make a bread as well. So this clip will actually be shot over probably about a week and a bit. So anyway, sourdough. Sourdough breads are a bread made from a starter. The starter is basically flour and water, and it relies on natural airborne yeast to create a culture within that flour and water. So some people have added pineapple juice and also sultanas, because there's wild active yeast on the outside of sultanas. So anyway, my arm's getting sore, so we'll get to it. Rightio, what we're going to use to begin with is a flour blend. This flour blend here is a mix of atta flour, 1-to-1 of atta and rye flour. The atta is just normal atta flour, the rye is an organic blend we bought from a health food shop. So it's just a 1-to-1 mix of the pair. So they say to add 50 grams, a couple of sites I've seen, roughly 50 grams of a blend of the two, but I'm using 1/3 of a cup, it's close enough. I think it comes out at about 60 grams. So that just goes into a jar. Now the jar, just to cover this, I actually boiled water and had it sitting in the jar for probably about 5-10 minutes just to kill off any nasties, then tipped it out and let the jar come back to room temperature. So in the jar goes 1/3 of a cup of the mixed flour. What we have here is 1/3 of a cup of water, and what they do suggest is not to use straight town water. Used a pure water, something that's been sitting out, and let the chlorine burn off, because chlorine kills fungus, bacteria and those sorts of things. That's why it's in our water system. So this is actually straight from our water filter. We've got an RO, reverse osmosis water filter, so this has just come straight from there, so we know it's all good. So that just goes in there, and a nice clean bamboo chopstick is just going to be used to stir it up. Now, a couple of sites I've seen have mentioned that apparently metals have a tendency to kill the yeast, the wild yeast. Now I don't know if that's for sure, that's certain, that's definitely what happens, but I've got these guys, so I'll mix with these. Better be safe than sorry, even if it just slows down the process a bit, probably better off not using it. Then again, I've seen heaps and heaps of clips where people use spoons, so hard to tell what's right and what's wrong. So anyway, to begin, it's as easy as that. It's like a thick pancake batter. It's not really going to move around, so that's just going to sit in the bottom of the jar here, and what we shall do is cover it with some cheesecloth, some nice clean cheesecloth. I like to do a double layer on mine, and it's as easy as that. I'm starting this one a bit late. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so come bedtime tonight I'll give that another stir, and just to get some oxygen in there to help the yeast breed. Rightio, it's day 2 now, and I'll just show you what it looks like. You might be able to make out there's a few little bubbles breaking the surface down in there. A bit hard to see, I'm sorry. Now what we're going to do is just feed it this morning. So to feed it, we basically add the same amounts of flour and water as yesterday, roughly about 1/3 of a cup of each. No need to be overly accurate with this. It's not a precise science, so some people would have you believe it is, but then again, you look at how many different ways there is to make the stuff, make up a starter. It's not that precise really, as long as you're consistent. Yeah, so 1/3 of a cup of the mixed rye and atta, and 1/3 of a cup of filtered water or dechlorinated water, and just give it a nice stir. Stir it in. So it's as easy as that. About mid-afternoon we'll get another stir, and then later on tonight as well, just before bed, we'll give it another one early evening. So we'll just be doing this procedure over and over for the next couple of days, and day 4 what we'll do is we'll probably pour some of this out, as it'll be growing too much. We might actually split it into another batch and offer it to some friends. And I don't know whether you can actually make this out or not. We'll see how the zoom goes. It's not going to come up. We're getting a whole heap of little bubbles all the way through the mixture down around there. But I'll take the top off and show you what it looks like inside. You can actually see the bubbles and the foaming on the top. So that's a good sign that the yeast is taken and it's working its magic. So tomorrow morning what I'm going to be doing is removing half of this mixture and splitting it. I'll ask some friends if they want me to feed up a batch of starter for them as well. And yeah, splitting it to remove the level, probably about down to about there, probably about 3/4 of a cup, and I'll feed that up. There'll be enough yeasty goodness in there to start up the batch. Otherwise, if I keep feeding it, what's going to happen is I'm going to run out of space in the jar. That just shows you how much growth has gone on in there with the yeast. Well, it's day number 4 now. Could be day number 5. I think I've lost a day there somewhere. But I'm going to split the sourdough starter. Normally you just discard it and put it down the sink. But I've got a friend who wants to try doing some starter dough, so we're going to divide it for Mark and Alison and they can have a go. So this is pretty much what you do. So this is the starter here. As you can see, I showed you last night, it had actually grown up to here. You can see a bit of a high tide mark. I don't know if that's coming up on the camera, but that's how much gas has gone out of it just overnight from when it was feeding on the carbohydrates within the flour. So what we're doing now is it's as easy as getting another container that's been sterilised with boiling hot water and dividing the mixture. Some of the recipes I've seen say just leave a tablespoon of the original starter in and feed it again. I'm going to be a little bit more generous than that. I'll probably leave 3 or 4 tablespoons in each, and some of it will end up getting discarded. So just give it a quick stir. As you can see, it's sort of nice and elasticy in there, all the little bubbles in it. So we'll try and make it as mess free as possible. I suppose I could just pour it in, couldn't I? So that's probably about 3 or 4 tablespoons, and I'll just get something to pour this into. If I knew anyone else, I would probably give them one as well. There's probably enough for about 3 or 4 starters in here. So there we go. Made a bit of a mess in my jar, but that's alright. Just use a spatula to clean up the sides of the jar a bit. Let's just see what's going on inside. So there we go. That's the level I've got it down to now. So that's probably about just under a cup, 2/3 of a cup. Now from here it's the same as every other day. You just keep feeding. So into each I'm doing 1/3 of a cup of the rye and atta flour mix. Alison and Mark might want to change this one into a bigger jar when they get it, so we'll just see. I'll speak to them this afternoon about it. And 1/3 of a cup of water into there. Give it a nice big stir around. And 1/3 of a cup of water into the mother. Just give that a bit of a stir around. So it's basically what it's doing is the yeast is using up the carbohydrates and the sugars within the flour and turning that into gas. So apparently the way I did it last time, I made a blog entry on a site I'm a member of. I ended up with hooch on top and a bit of a flat growth. It wasn't really growing, and I ended up with a layer of clear alcohol, probably about 5 to 6 millimeters. That is hooch. It's alcohol. It's what they brew in prison when they can't get alcohol, apparently. So the website tells me. I have no practical experience. Yeah, so that's pretty much all it, splitting the starter. Now every couple of days, every three days or so, I'm going to go through that process again. I'll split it again. I'll start to use it in probably 3 days time. It's Friday today, so probably Monday morning I'll get a loaf of bread ready. So